Well, welcome back to another Coffee and a Chat Survival Saturday edition. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the oil lamps. I think I must have mentioned them in last week's video. And so I don't know what her name really is, but her YouTube name is The Calm Way Home. And she had asked if I would maybe share a little bit more about how to care for the wick and the lamp and putting oil in and all of that. And I thought, well, that is a great video to do for a Survival Saturday. So you're kind of getting a Survival Saturday and an Ask Angie and everything all in one. So how good is that? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the oil lamps today. And with that, because as I was preparing for this, I realized I've got a few extras I'm going to share. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate a ton of stuff with this because safety is a huge thing when dealing with an oil lamp. And this is what I have it on, okay? I don't have anything solid. My house is tore up like you would not believe because we've got extra people here and we're still trying to figure out how to make everything work. And so trying to find a place where I can do a video is challenging anyway, and it kind of puts me back here in my little corner. And this is all I've got. Plus, I been having some issues with one of my legs, mainly the knee. And yeah, something decided to go really haywire last night. So I am struggling with even walking, let alone moving things around. And everybody else is kind of busy doing things, and which means I have a few moments of quiet that I can come do a video. So I don't have the best setup. Even my lighting is off today. But those of you that have been with me a long time know that I don't let anything get in the way. We're just going to do what we're going to do, and that's part of living a real life. And I'll never be one of them fancy YouTubers that seems like my life is so perfect and everything just goes so well. No, my life's a mess. And I'm not afraid to say it because it just is what it is. And when those things happen, that's the real world. And that's what I want to bring to you is the realness of life, because I'm living it, and how God can be in that. And so God is going to kind of be in this one today too. So, because I got a couple things I want to share that really hit my heart as I was preparing for this video. So, first things first, safety. When you're dealing with an oil lamp, this oil that you use, highly flammable. So you do not want to spill it on anything. It's not like gasoline or something like that will kind of, with a little bit of time evaporate and be gone. It's an oil, and it will cling and it will catch fire very easily, and trying to put it out or get it under control is not necessarily going to be that simple. So you want to be very careful from the get-go. These lamps, and I've got a bunch of them. What I'm missing is I haven't found the box that has all the chimneys yet, but like this chimney came, a friend of ours who passed away, he had this chimney, and they were just going to send it to the dump, and I rescued it, and it fit this lamp. So I'm like, okay. And then I've got another one that I found, a chimney in the thrift store for like $2. It wasn't too bad. And so I've got another lamp that's good to go. And for me, because this is my backup for power outages, and I try to find a safe place for, so as soon as I've got a lamp good to go, I have it ready to go, and I have it in a safe place. They are not meant to pick up and carry around. I don't care what you see in the movies. You find a solid place for this to sit. Like this, I would never leave it on this wobbly little table here. But it's just for demonstration purposes. So the first thing you got to do with your oil lamp is, make sure it's all cleaned up, dusted off, all that, looks all pretty and shiny. And then to put oil in it, and you just get oil lamp oil. And I haven't had to buy any in a long time because I don't use these that often. And my mom, which is where I inherited them from, she had quite the collection of them. And she also had a lot, I still have oil for lamps. She had bought quite a bit of oil, but I know I used to see them like in the dollar stores and stuff where you could get a little jar of, or a little bottle of the lamp oil, and you can look online. It's not hard to find it. And they come in, sometimes you can get them in different colors. These are just no scent, no nothing, just clear, plain lamp oil. But you want to make sure that you're using something that is made to put in an oil lamp. And then I go outside. I do not do this in my house because, like I said, even the littlest spill can become a problem. So this, first you would not have your chimney on. Okay, don't fall off the table. And this part here, it just unscrews. Okay, I'm not going to take it all off because I don't want to have oil in my office here. But you would take that off, and then it, you know, into the, it's a fairly good size opening. You know, you can kind of tell that from my hands that it's this. And you just, you know, carefully pour your oil in. You might want to use a funnel just to be on the safe side, in which case you have a funnel that is just for your oil lamps. You don't use it for anything else, because I find even trying to clean it up can be challenging. So, you know, and I keep that stuff somewhere outside the house because, again, it's flammable. So you put, and I just fill it up, not totally full, but like mine has a little neck here. I don't know if you can see that, which probably leaves it about an inch below the neck, and when, or with the neck, so maybe a half an inch below the neck. And I just kind of fill to that line so that it's not totally, you know, I don't want it to be overflowing or anything, because then you lower it down with the wick. And this wick, there's a little handle that makes your wick go up and down, and that's how you feed it through. If you have to put new wick in, you put it in from the bottom, I believe, if I remember right. I'm trying to remember. I haven't had to do that in a while. You could probably do it from the bottom or the top, and you just use this to turn it, to put it where you want. And so the bottom of your wick goes down into the oil. And like, see my wick, it's full of oil. And because it wicks up. Isn't that amazing? The wick wicks up, which is why we call it a wick. So it pulls it up to that. And so if I was going to light this, I would not have it way up there, but I would bring it up enough. I would light this, and then I would adjust it and keep it down as low as I could. And then when it starts getting, you know, an hour or more later, you know, you might need to just bring it up a smidgen to get enough. Now, and that's really how simple it is. You put your shade on after you light it, and there's little metal arms that come up off this neck that hold it in place. And you want to make sure all of those are on the outside and that this fits in there. Not too tight so that it breaks your chimney, but not so loose that your chimney could fall off, because this also helps control your flame and is a protection. Okay, you do have to, once you have your lamp ready to go, you know, you do have to take care of this wick. So again, a special pair of scissors that is just for trimming wicks, because you will get the oil on it. And I just like to err on the side of caution and not take risks. So, and this wick is what kind of got me thinking about some things spiritually. So when you cut it, you cut the corners so that you kind of get a peak, all right? And that's how you start it. Now, as it burns, and this one I've only burned a little bit since I originally trimmed it, so it's still angled on one side but not on the other. And you can, well, if we're in really close, you see how you can see some of that black. Wait, is that even going in focus? I don't know what I'm doing, but anyway, it will turn black as it burns, and the more it burns, the blacker this will get, and it's almost like a melted ribbon, and it will go straight across. So maintaining this is that you have to keep an eye on your wick, and the more you use it, the more often you would need to trim it. I go ahead and trim mine at least once a year, just so they're good to go. And maybe I should leave this in the picture for a minute here. But if you're using it more often, you'll need to trim it a little more often. And again, I go outside to trim my wicks and then carefully bring them back in and set them on a solid surface, and make sure everybody in the house knows that if we need to use this lamp, it stays right here. We don't pick it up, we don't carry it, we don't move it somewhere else. We let it sit on this solid surface that has nothing flammable around it. It has plenty of room and air. You know, I choose my places very carefully and before I use the lamp. And it used to just be Marvin and I. Now there's other people in the house. And so when I light these, I'm going to make sure that everybody understands about the oil lamp. And I'm sure I'll get a, oh yeah, sure, whatever. But I do, whether I need them or not, I light them a few times a year just to keep them in use and to make sure I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, because the trickiest part for me when I light my lamp is getting the chimney back on without getting burnt or whatever. You know, I want to do that as soon as I can because this metal will heat up without the chimney on it. And then, you know, you're dealing with hot metal too. So I try to get that as quick as I can. And I run my flame as low as I can. And then I bring it up after. And if you want to put the flame out, that's all you do is you just keep lowering it and it will go out. You don't have to blow it out. In fact, trying to blow it out maybe could be a problem. You would think you'd have to take the chimney off, and this chimney is going to get very hot when you're using your lamp. So you don't want to do that. So you just lower your wick slowly until it goes out. Now, the maintaining of trimming the wick, and I already said you do it in an upside down V, right? So it comes to a point. And the reason you have to trim your wick and not just keep letting, see, I used to think, you know, let's do things as easy as possible. What do we need to trim the wick for? You know, just let it burn flat. But the thing is, it will stop burning clean because you don't want to see smoke coming out of here. You want it to be a clean burn. But as that wick is being used and as time goes on, eventually you start getting some kind of sooty residue coming up, and you want to not have that. You want it to burn clean. And the other thing is that it affects the brightness of the flame. So to get it to burn clean and burn bright, you have to trim the wick from time to time. And that's what got me thinking. And part of it is right now I'm studying in the book of Job. That's where I'm reading, not really studying. This is where I'm reading. I'm studying Elohim. Everywhere that the word Elohim is used, whether it's for the one true God, because that's what it means is God, or if it's talking about false gods or whatever, I'm doing a study from cover to cover on the Greek word, on the Hebrew word Elohim, and I'll tell you what it is in Greek when I get there. Right now I'm still in the Hebrew, but because it's in there a lot. So as I'm going through this, all right, when I used to hate the book of Job. I'm just going to be honest with you. I didn't even want to read it because it's like God set Job up, and I want him to be this loving, caring God that is only going to do things in my best interest, right? I don't want him to set me up, but I've learned some things since then, and he is a loving God, like I want him to be. But sometimes what he does, it's not to set me up, but it is for my good. Just like in Jeremiah, where it says, I know the plans that I have for you, to do you good and not to harm you. That is true. That is absolutely true. Even as far as to prosper us. It's just, we have our interpretation of what's good. We have our interpretation of what it means to be prospered. And that does not always line up with God's. But the one thing we know for sure is that we can trust God to do good. Okay, so on safety purposes, wish me luck. I'm going to try to move this to another surface so I don't bump it and knock it over, because I want to just read a little bit of this to you and just kind of share some of the things that I'm seeing. So the book of Job starts out this way. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. And then it goes on and says he had 7 sons, 3 daughters, and then all these sheep and oxen and camels, or, you know, he was a very wealthy man. And he was thought very highly of others. In fact, it says he was the greatest man among all the people of the East. All right, so it goes on and talks about how he used to make sacrifices to cover in case his children sinned, and, you know, that he watched out for his family. He was a loving father, and he loved the Lord. Well, then in verse 6, it says, one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? And Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. And then here comes the part I never used to like. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Well, I'll bet you Satan already had this in his mind, because God knows everything. And even though, I would look at this like, well, why did God throw him under the bus? Why did he even mention him? Job wouldn't have had to go through all those things if God had just been quiet about it. But I'm pretty sure Satan was already thinking about it. And that's why God's like, hey, I already know what you're thinking about. So what do you think about Job? And then Job goes on. This is why I think he was already thinking about it, because he knows who Job is. And he's like, does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied, have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You've blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. And so this becomes a thing where Satan was already considering this, and God's going to show Satan something here, that he doesn't know Job, that it's not always that easy. Now, some of us, it is easy. It doesn't take much for us to come to that point where we're mad at God, or we're upset with him, or think, he's not doing what we think he should be doing, or doing it the way we think he should be doing it. But who are we? I don't know about you, but in honesty, I'd be a horrible, horrible God. And I'm so glad that I'm not, and that God is God, and that he's the one in charge. So when you go through the book of Job, it talks about, first, and here's the thing, Satan couldn't do anything that God didn't give him permission to. So at first, he was able to put his hand against Job's family and against his possessions. And then, and he still went and cursed God. Now, he wasn't all like, oh, no big deal. It was a big deal, and he was upset. And there's, and he's like, what did I ever do to you, God? Why are you doing this to me? And yet God doesn't say he sinned in that. So, he questioned things, and he spoke his mind. And then Satan's going, well, it's, okay, but you won't let me touch him. Let me touch him and I can get him cursed. And so God says, okay, you can touch him, but you can't take his life. And so then Job gets stricken with these boils and all this horrible, and he's just suffering. So even his wife comes out and says, look, just curse God and die already. Be done with it. Why are you putting yourself through this? But Job, even though he questioned things, even though he spoke out how hard it was, and the troubles he was going through, he didn't curse God and die. He didn't turn his back on God. He questioned what God was doing, because we always, well, in a way you can say, because God gave the permission, that it is God. It's at God's hands. But in the end, when Job passed the test, he came to a point, and God restored everything to him more. But Job didn't stay faithful to God for that, because he didn't know that was ever going to happen. But he stayed faithful to God because he feared God. He loved God. And ultimately, that's what it came down to. Now, I do believe that there are times when Satan does ask for permission and God grants it. Peter, was talking to Jesus and being all, I'd never do this. And he says, Peter, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. And God must have said yes, because then it was, you're going to be challenged because you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter's like, I would never do that. And that's where, I have to look honestly at my life. And I know I say, you have to look honestly at your life too, that we think, oh, I would never do that. But we don't know what we would really do until we're faced with it. And even though Peter was so sure he would never deny Christ, when he was faced with it, he did. I think it's Luke's account that hits my heart the most, because I think it's in Luke's account where it says that when he denied Jesus the 3rd time, that Jesus, who was being beaten and all these accusations stuff, but he was being beaten and tortured, he turns and he looks at Peter and makes eye contact with him. Now, I don't think it was I told you so look, but I think it was, I still love you, look. But it's, in that account, it says when Peter made that eye contact with Jesus, he fled. He ran. He was so ashamed. Now, why would a loving God allow these things to happen to us? Because I'll tell you, for many, many months now, for like over 7 months, Marvin and I have been kind of going through a Job type thing. And we talked about it this morning. Why does God allow these things? For one thing, if I never had troubles, I would never know how much I need to lean on the Lord. And I would probably become arrogant and think I had it all together, and I would not have the relationship that I have with the Lord. It's our need. When we see our need and we know there's no place else to go, that's when most people run to the Lord. He should be the first place we go. But we're silly human beings, and usually it's when there is no other option. And then the Lord delivers. So I know that part of it is that. I think part of it too is to keep me humble. I also know that some of the things that I've gone through in life, which I believe because I'm a child of God, has only been because God gave permission to allow it. I don't think the enemy can come and touch me of his own accord. He has to go through the Father. And the Father allows it at times because it helps me become a better person. Now, in the moment, that's a hard thing to say, but I can look back and see and be thankful for horrible things that I've gone through because of the work it did in me. And if I'd never gone through that, who would I be? Paul, when he asked for God to heal him of his affliction, and all 3 times God said, no, my grace is sufficient for you. And Paul said he knew that God did that because it kept him humble, and he would be an arrogant jerk if he was whole. But this affliction that he had, which seems to be that it was an eye problem, which probably came from the scales that were on his eyes when he met the Lord and went through the blindness. But God would not deliver that from him because it kept him humble. And Paul was the kind of guy that needed to become humble and be kept in a place to keep him humble because he was a man of great pride. So this is where I have to trust that the Lord knows what's best for me. It's like even this morning, Marvin hit me with another one. A bill we hadn't expected. It's kind of hefty. And we had just been talking about this, and not because, I'm like, oh, I need my attitude straightened out, because every time the next thing happens, I'm like, like I'm so defeated. Like, when is this going to end? And Marvin and I just talked about that. So when he said, okay, it's not good, and here's what we need. Well, we got it. And we need it right now. What are we going to do? And I could have gone and I could feel that. But instead I go, okay, well, I'm going to have to talk to my Father about it because we don't have it. And he'll take care of us. And I'm just going to trust him in that. So I can already see, and I figure maybe the sooner I learn what I need to learn and grow in what I need to grow in, and the same thing for Marvin, because it's both of us, maybe the sooner we can come out of this thing and maybe get a little bit of rest. But I look at it this way. These are just normal things that happen in life. Cars break down and you got to fix them. Dishwashers stop working and you're either going to wash dishes by hand or come up with the money to get it fixed or buy a new one. Stuff happens. And if we can't deal with that normal stuff, as things keep progressing, and I'm telling you, it's going to progress faster than, I believe it's going to progress faster than what we originally, many of us thought. But as things progress and the decline of this world, as we step in to, we're already in the end times, but things where I believe it's very possible we're going to see the Antichrist. We're going to know who that is shortly. There's a lot of things that we read about in the Word of God that we already are seeing happen, and there's more coming. And it's hard. It's hard stuff. But we're to endure. That's what the Bible says. And he who endures to the end, receives the gift of life. So I don't want to be tempted to ever turn my back on the Lord or to deny Jesus Christ, because that's fatal and there's no coming back from it. But I want to stand true for him. And what if it gets so bad? What if I have to choose being killed or denying Christ? Well, I sure hope I'm going to choose death over denial, because that's the only right answer. And of course, it sends me right into the arms of Jesus. And as Marvin and I were talking about, that we're at an age and a time in our lives where going home to be with the Lord, not a bad thing. I was hit really hard last night in my body with a level of pain I had not been at up to this point, and the inability to walk. I was stuck. Marvin had to basically almost pretty much carry me to the bed, and that's not an easy task. So I was feeling, there were other things that started happening. I was feeling really not okay. And I got kind of choked up for a minute, and I told Marvin, look, there's some stuff going on. I'm not scared, but I don't know if this isn't maybe my time. So if it is, if I'm going home to be with the Lord tonight, I just want you to know that I love you so much, and I am so grateful to you for being a loving and healing husband to me, everything that you've done and how you've been there for me, and the joy that you've brought to me, and all the laughter and all these things, and I'm just thanking him for it. And, just know that, and that I'm okay, because if this is my time, that's a good thing for me, not so good for him. It would leave him with some problems to deal with on his own, but for me, it would be a good thing, and it's like, okay, I'm ready to go. And I wasn't scared, but I did have that feeling that when I close my eyes, I may not open them up again here. Well, I'm still here. It wasn't my time. And that's awesome too. I'm good either way. But that knowing that my day will come, and it's not a bad thing. And Marvin and I, we talk about it because it's part of life. And I know some people get upset about that. Well, that's a negative confession. No, it's not. I hate to break it to you, but you're dying. We're all dying. They say the moment we were born, we started to die. And if we live long enough, that's the joke. If we live long enough, we'll die. It's our lot. It's what happens. It's the natural course of things in the cycle. And I'd rather be at peace with it. It's not that we're walking around going, oh, I think I'm going to die. No. But sometimes things happen and you realize if the Lord's either going to raise me up or he's going to take me home. And it was kind of that moment last night, that the Lord's either going to raise me up or he's going to take me home. Well, he raised me up pretty awesome this morning. And in fact, I was doing really good for quite a while. Things were, so I do think that even though I'm having these bouts, that things are getting better in my body, because I'm having points where they are better and even maybe okay. It doesn't last, and then something comes back and I've got to deal with it. But, somebody said, what if this is going to be this way for the rest of your life? Because, you've been dealing with this for several months and the Lord hasn't taken it away. And I've had it. Well, then I'm going to praise him in it. And I'm going to thank him for it, because I know that God wouldn't allow it to come on me unless it was for my own good and doing a good work in me. So all of this coming from trimming the wick on the oil lamp. So let's switch gears again. Let's bring this oil lamp and this wick back very carefully. Why did I say you have to trim your wick and keep it trimmed up? Is because so your lamp can burn clean and bright. I want my spirit to burn clean and bright for my Heavenly Father. So he has to keep my wick trimmed up and cut away the dead stuff that doesn't belong there, and get it in that upside down V shape, that arrow that points to Him, and then I burn my brightest and my cleanest and do my greatest work for Him. It doesn't always feel good when God cuts the dead stuff away. But once it's been cut away and we've been set free, then it's awesome. And I remember that. So right now, my wick in life is getting trimmed. But that's okay. It doesn't feel good. It hurts. And it's making things a little more difficult than I'd like them to be. And I'm having to depend on other people to do things for me that I would rather just do myself. But don't have much choice. And it's okay. I'm good with it because I know that God chooses what's best for me. Whether I understand that or not, He knows things I don't know. And He's preparing me. And if I can't handle these normal things now, how am I going to handle it when it gets really tough? When the cost is my life? I don't know. It's just been a lot of things for me to think about. I love when God gives me things to think about. I love when they're challenging and take some deep thought, because I think that it helps me be a better person, and that's what I want to be for Him. So if you stuck with me to the end, then you know more than just taking care of your oil lamp. But you know something about how that can be a picture to us. And I tell you, I will never light any of my oil lamps ever again without thinking about this and what God, has to do in my life, and how He has to. And as I trim my wicks, I will be thinking, yep, just like Jesus has to trim the dead stuff off of me, the things that interfere with me being pure and clean and burning bright. Your light burns brighter when you've had your wick trimmed. All right, with that, I'm going to let you guys go. You have an awesome day today. I love you, but God loves you even more. And just because hard things come into your life, it doesn't mean you're under a curse. It doesn't mean that it's all the enemy. Because ultimately, if you belong to Jesus Christ, the enemy can't touch you without God's permission, and He will only grant permission if it's in your best interest, whether you understand it or not. It's trust Him. All right, I love you guys. I'll talk to you later, and I got to reach way over here to hit my button.